On September 1st, 1939, the Second World War had begun. 6 years and 1 day later, on September 2nd, 1945, over 5.7 million Jews had been massacred. In that short period of time, Adolf Hitler and the Nazis had implemented their plan to exterminate the inferior races, and seemingly countless lives were lost as a result.
So why exactly did Hitler hate the Jews?
Hitler had blamed the Jewish people for Germany's economic crisis and their loss in World War I. He made out the Jews to be Germany's arch-enemy. By using propaganda, he convinced the German people to believe his views about Jews. The Nazis had control of all the media that was distributed to the people, so any lie they wanted to spread could be done so in mass quantity.
Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. This quote proves Hitler's intentions to deceive his country. Hitler and now the German people shared the belief that the Jews were subhumans. The Nazis thought they had the right and responsibility to cleanse the world of Jewish poison. Hitler was not trying to hide what he was doing. In fact, he made it very obvious. While in prison for an attempted revolt, he wrote his book entitled Mein Kampf, which translates to My Struggle. In his book, he outlined some of his key beliefs. He referred to Jews as parasites, dirty liars, and unscrupulous monsters. Hitler also explained his concept of inequality among races and how Aryans were superior. The Jewish people, of course, at the bottom of the hierarchy, along with blacks and gypsies. He described Jews to be the mightiest counterpart to Aryans. Hitler discussed his belief that Aryans were perfect. He said that all the advances made in art, science, and technology are due to the Aryan race. This was Hitler's first step into taking control of Germany, putting his beliefs and ideals into place, and creating what he believed to be a perfect world, one without inferior beings. Along with Mein Kampf, he composed a letter addressing the Jewish question. Written to one Herr Gemlich, a German soldier, the letter is thought to be the first known piece of anti-Semitic writing by Hitler. Hitler explains to Gemlich that the Jews need to be eradicated from German life and that they have only survived due to thousands of years of inbreeding. He described the Jews to be a leech fastened upon the nations, and then goes on to say they destroy the character of princes with Byzantine flattery. Hitler compares the effects of Jews to a racial tuberculosis of the nations. Hitler's hatred of the Jews was clear, and had it been noticed, perhaps none of this would have happened.
There are a lot of what-ifs in history, such as, what if Hitler never came to power? During World War I, an English soldier, Henry Tandy, a recipient of the Victorian Cross, caught a wounded German soldier in his gun sights. Taking pity on his injured state, rather than kill him, he let him live. The German soldier that was spared? Adolf Hitler.
On the left is Henry Tandy, the soldier who spared Hitler. And on the right, the German soldier before he wore his iconic mustache.
So what if Hitler had not been spared by Tandy? Maybe the entire Holocaust would have ceased to exist. 5.7 million people might be with us here today. The entire Nazi Party might never have been. The whole concept of creating a superior race would have died along with Hitler.
But as we all know, Hitler lived, came to power, and eventually him and the Nazis implemented their plan to create a superior race. When the war began on September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Britain and France responded by declaring war on Germany, but took little action over the following months. In 1940, Germany launched its next initiative by attacking Denmark and Norway, followed by attacks on Belgium and the Netherlands and France. After all these nations were conquered in the summer of 1940, Germany launched an attack on Britain, but this time from the air. The Battle of Britain was Germany's first military failure. They were not able to overcome Britain's Royal Air Force. Italy, an ally of Germany, expanded the war even further by invading Greece and North Africa. The Greek campaign was a failure, and Germany was forced to overcome Italy's assistance in early 1941. Later, in 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union and initially made good progress by advancing deep into Russia. As Germany gained more control, they set their plan to create a superior race into motion. It began with laws that required Jewish people and other inferiors to be exiled from the general population, and were forced into overcrowded and filthy areas of the cities that were used as temporary holding places. Eventually, remote concentration camps were established to place all the lesser people in. As they were pulled from the ghettos and placed in the camps, they were forced into slave labor until disease, starvation, or exhaustion killed them. More concentration camps were set up as the Nazis continued to conquer other areas of Europe. Furthermore, death squads began to execute Jews and others in shooting massacres, burying them in mass graves throughout the continent. Later in World War II, the Nazis pushed a final solution into motion. This was when the concentration camps became extermination camps. The sole objective was to execute as many people as possible in the most efficient manner. Millions upon millions of people died in the camps. Saying that the ways they murdered people in the concentration camps were brutal would be an understatement. Some of the grotesque methods include tricking Jews into a van that had the exhaust pipe linked into the interior of the van and driving to the burial site. Needless to say, there were no survivors. The Jews were led into what they thought was a shower, but rather than bathing, they were showered with cyanide gas. And of course, the uninhabitable conditions of the camps took many lives as well. Darwin's research and publications influenced the Nazis' concept of creating a superior race. Hitler believed that the human gene pool could be improved by using selective breeding, similar to how farmers breed superior cattle. The racial policies Hitler's government produced were based on Darwinism. This led to their idea of mass extermination of the inferiors to prevent their genes from mixing with their own genes, which they deemed superior. This philosophy was dubbed the final solution, which entailed the mass genocide of millions of people. The Nazis felt responsible for creating a superior human race. Hitler was obsessed with the concept of a master race. The ideal member of the master race was referred to as Übermensch, which literally translates to Superman. Any person not of pure Aryan descent was considered Untermensch, which translates to subhuman creature. The Übermensch had blonde hair and blue eyes and were intended to rule the earth during the Nazis' so-called Thousand-Year Reich, which translates to Thousand-Year Kingdom. This is ironic because Hitler was not Übermensch himself. Mixed marriages between Aryans and other races were forbidden. The Nazis forcibly sterilized hundreds of thousands of people who they viewed as physically or mentally unfit.
Was there anything else the Nazis did to create their superior race?
Well, the Lebensborn Project was one of the most terrifying Nazi projects. It was initially intended to offer women of racially pure descent the possibility to birth a child in secret. The child would be taken and raised with the Nazi organization. But the policy transformed into kidnapping children with the desired traits from conquered countries. These children were taken to centers where everything was done to force the children to forget and reject their birth parents. They were even lied to and told that their birth parents rejected them. Then they were brainwashed with Nazi education. Those who refused were beaten.
At the height of Germany's reign, their downfall came. The invasion of the USSR would prove to be too much for Germany's forces. From its brutal winters to its vast landscape, Russia was Germany's wall that could not be broken. Germany was then forced into a full-scale retreat. In June of 1944, the Allied forces of America and Britain launched the D-Day invasion. They landed on the coast of Normandy, which was French territory that the Germans occupied. Soon, the German army had to retreat from there as well. By early 1945, the Allied forces were closing in on Germany from the east and west. Hitler, knowing he had no other option, committed suicide. Once Berlin was reached by the Soviets, Germany surrendered on May of 1945. With Hitler dead and Germany no longer a threat, the concept of the reign of a superior race over the whole world was now wiped from history.
But for the sake of argument, let's say Hitler actually did succeed with his plans.
Well, the Nazis believed they were making the world a better place by cleansing the world of the Jews. They felt responsible for creating the master race, and they thought they had the right to do this. So what if Hitler had succeeded? Perhaps all of the deemed inferior races might not be here today. Perhaps Germany would be the utopian capital of the planet. Maybe they would have perfected their concept of a master race. But how can we know?